Well, good evening. We've got a quick story for you about the elections in Italy. And yes, we are going to do a very special episode for our friends in the Texas Nationalist Party, also committed to peaceful legal separation. There was an article criticizing Texas secession, and we as Californians are going to argue why that's garbage on their behalf. Maybe they'll agree with our arguments, maybe they won't. We thought it'd be fun and something nice to do and interesting. And we'll be doing that very next episode. But we wanted to get this one out because something happened in Italy that proves something that we've been saying here. Now, since 2018, CalExit has been talking about TOM, T-O-M, tyranny of the minority. And what we were saying is that California can't be treated fairly in America anymore and should therefore secede because the Constitution bakes in unfair representation. Let me show you what I mean. We're going to do a deep dive real quick. Not a deep dive, but a couple points. By 2040, democracy in America will be dead. If you think the battle between coastal liberal populations and rural conservatives is bad now, it is only going to get worse. Every year, the conservative rural interior of America will have more power, and the areas of America where the population lives will have less power. So watch that, okay? By 2040, the Senate will probably not represent the American people to a shocking degree. American presidents like Donald Trump, who are super extreme compared to the average American, will become the norm, and extremists who have opinions out of touch with most of America will routinely be appointed to the Supreme Court. We were saying this back in 2018, okay, 4 years ago. We were pointing this out. These are the patterns. And where we got that data was mostly from Norman Ornstein. Now, Norman Ornstein was a demographer, and he said, I want to repeat a statistic I use in every talk. By 2040 or so, 70% of Americans will live in 15 states, meaning 30% of Americans will choose 70 senators, and the 30% will be older, whiter, more rural, and more male than the 70%. So he's talking about how because of the Senate, because of the Electoral College, because the Supreme Court is appointed by the presidency and the Senate, and because the Senate itself and the Electoral College are unfair to a popular vote, that what's going to happen is up to the year 2040, you're going to have about 30% of the population is going to own most of the Senate and most of the House, and well, at least most of the Senate, and will control most of the laws, even though there will be a minority of the population. And the reason is the Constitution bakes in rights for states and not people. States are guaranteed 2 senators. States are guaranteed proportional representation. States are guaranteed the right that their senators have to approve the president's suggestions in order to have the Supreme Court. So states get the benefit in elections for the presidency, the Senate, and ultimately the Supreme Court, which means they have oversized influence in all 3 branches of government, the executive, the congressional, and the judiciary. And this is only going to get worse going into the future. This is the Norman Ornstein prediction. It's based upon the U.S. Census. This is why you have a Supreme Court that a majority of Americans don't agree with. It's because a minority of states have a majority of the Senate because of unfair systems baked into the Constitution itself. We've covered this years and years and years, pointing this out. Well, now this TOM system, where you have unfair representation given to states, so you have a minority of the population can actually control the majority, which is not democracy. That's exactly what happened in Italy. Everybody's freaking out about how Italy could have this extreme conservative government. Well, how did Italy have this extreme conservative government that shocks all of Europe? Well, it had that extreme conservative government take over because it has American-style voting instead of European-style voting. So Europeans typically have proportional representation. American-style has winner take all. So proportional representation versus winner take all. Italy has the American style winner take all. Italy was just taken over by fascists. Italy just had alt-right people take over the government through the winner take all election system. And now a minority of the Italian population which does stuff that the majority of the population doesn't like, is now in control. The reason that that happened, and that super unfair alt-right grab for power in a democracy, is because Italy has the same jacked up, backwards ass democratic voting system that America has. And that's why I brought this up. We have a bad system for elections, both at the Electoral College level, the Senate level, and therefore at the selection and approval of the Supreme Court level. And it has resulted in the Supreme Court passing things like overturning Roe v. Wade and gun regulations and Donald Trump coming into office and George W. Bush coming into office, things that were not popularly elected. Well, Italy has the exact same problem, and it has resulted in the exact same issues. So I want to point that out. Here we go, a couple quotes. Together, they won nearly 44% of the popular vote, yet it ended up with a whopping 59% of the legislative seats in the Chamber of Deputies. That's how the Conservatives won in Italy. They only had 44% of the votes, but they won a majority, a controlling majority of the government, just like what happens here in America. Italy has, quote, Italy has long used the U.S.-style winner-take-all election system. That's why they're screwed up now. In Italy's election, there was a huge schism in the election results by the winner-take-all districts versus proportional representation districts. See? In the winner-take-all districts, the center-right coalition was able to parlay its 44% minority of the popular vote into an astounding 82% of districted seats. The alt-right people were able to use 44% in order to claim 82%. Because Italy used a winner-take-all, aka American-style system. They're not alone. This is how Viktor Orban in Hungary also got to install fascism in his country. His party had, they won 82% and 67%, although they were really only 54% of the population. And they were able to do that because of the winner-take-all American-style democracy. Now you go to America, and this is in that same article talking about Italy. Senate is currently split 50-50 senators for each party. The Democratic half won over 41 million votes than the Republican half and represents 56% of the American people. Yet, it's a 50-50 split. So Democrats represent 56% of America, but they only get 50% of the votes in the Senate. See how that's not democracy? 16 states with a smaller population combined equal that of just California. So 16 states it takes to equal the population of California, yet California only gets 2 senators just like them. This article talking about Italy specifically brings up how democracy is unfair to California in America. I want to repeat that. This article talking about Italy and explaining how the democracy failed in Italy specifically brings up California as an example of unfair representation in democracy. Hint, hint. Why did a bunch of Italians single out California unless it's that bad? GOP senators have not represented a majority of the population since 1999. Yet Republicans have held a majority of the Senate seats for almost the last 20 years. So when you're looking at why George W. Bush got elected and Donald Trump and Kavanaugh and the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, it's because we have the winner-take-all system, which gives unfair representation to the states over the population. If you're not totally clear that that's the reason why California should secede, because we will never be treated fairly in that democratic system, well, I just pointed out to you the reason that Italy and Hungary have turned to fascism is because they're using the exact same election process as America is. Smoking gun. No bigger proof. It's called Tom. Watch out. That's the end of the show. Just wanted to make that point. Let's take a look at the comments. The Venetian Independence better start pumping this up. What is the Venetian Independence? The alt-right ain't gonna respect the hard work the Venetians did for their culture. Okay. California should leave the United States and establish a direct democracy. Yeah, I agree. Okay, well, that's it for this show. We're going to come back with why Texas has the right to secede. Give me a second. That's coming soon.